Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Thursday GT4 versus TCX Championship here on RCI TV from the Temple of Speed, Monza. And tonight, brought to you by an entirely different cast. Your regular cast, everyone's either sick or has other commitments. So on the cameras, and this is a statement we haven't said in a long old time, ladies and gentlemen, those who've been around RCI long enough might remember this, Ryan Gill is taking the cameras tonight, being able to show us off all the angles of the GT4s and the TCX battle. And joining me is Kevin Boss, who's no stranger to some of these. Kevin, welcome to the Temple of Speed.
Temple of Speed in the slowest cars that we have available to us in the game, so this is going to be a blast.
Well, it's going to be, I think today's whole motto, especially in qualifying, I think is going to be slipstream. Some of the slower cars, some of the slower balance of performance cars on this track are really going to struggle in a straight line, so they're going to be, tucked right up, as we're seeing basically that on front of our screens. Can you see the poor little Alpine in front? He'll probably be a lot bigger by the time that you get to the end of the main straight, as John Aracer for the 699 Racing McLaren got P2 at Suzuka in this car, and that's not an easy car to muscle around there. Be a lot happier being able to go in a straight line today. And this man here, William Stevenson for the Connection Loss Racing, you have to smile when there's one of these big boats on here. Just a Chevrolet Camaro GT4 car. When this car was announced in the pack, I absolutely laughed my head off at it, but after driving it, I do kind of understand it. It is great fun.
Well, I haven't had the pleasure of driving it yet, but I do know how it feels to drive the big boats and cars not even being able to pass you. To go past you, sorry. So, yeah, let's see how it does. It actually goes completely off into the wall there. Must have completely lost his brake marker there. But yeah, like you said, it's going to be a lot of slipstreaming because, boy, do they need it.
Yeah, and it's really going to be it's going to be one of those days for certain drivers who you kind of have to hang on to your championship hopes. You just have to do anything that you can where your car isn't the best. And some cars, I think we might see quite a mix-up in qualifying, because I remember before we have ran a race with GT4s here with the little Alpines. And they can do surprisingly well in the qualifying, but then in the race they just struggle because you just don't have that speed. And as soon as you get someone in front of you dictating your corner speed, you're basically done. You can't make it up anymore. So you might see a little bit more of an alternate strategy being employed by some of the Alpines.
Well, strategy is going to be a tough one as we have two 30-minute races, so no pit stop requirements because of that. So that will make it even tougher for them. But yeah, with already not a lot of corners being here at Monza, it's going to be even tougher for them. Yeah,
it's going to end up being where you have to kind of latch onto someone and pick when your battles are. We might see that some of the drivers opt to not immediately go gung-ho right out of the bat. Opt to stay back, keep the tires a little bit fresher, keep within the tow so that you can be dragged along, and then towards the end of the race, then that's when you make your move, because then you have to take any position. That's going to be even more prevalent, I think, in the TCX class, where it's matched machinery, the same car. You can change the setup slightly, but other than that, you're all racing on the same platform, and you all have the same problem, where the tires in a TCX car, my God, do they go off quickly.
Yeah, and especially if it's in a single make class, you really want to make the most of your corner entries and exits, get any little advantage where you can grab it, whether it's just that little bit of extra speed going out, catching the slipstream of the car in front, and then maybe outbraking your opponent in the next turn. It's all going to be very important for those guys.
Exactly so. And as we wait for the sort of grade, the qualifying the qualifying to roll around fully, I'm trying to hedge my money on who I'm gonna bet on in the TCX class. It's been very close from what I've seen, at least watching the last week's race.
Yeah, from what I saw, like you've got all the usual top guys really going at it. So it could be any of those, like with the likes of like Andy Bortman, Jordan Daly, which we've already seen on the server. They can always spring a nice little surprise for everyone. But yeah, it's gonna be a wait and see what's actually going to happen as we now go live to qualifying, where we can see the little TCX M2 Cup cars on track already.
Well, it's Ted Ventura for the 190, for the Race Ventura 195 following out. I believe there is another car in front of him. I thought that there might be a lot more bunching up in the TCX class, but we might see that towards the end as people try to grab some slipstream. And it's a difficult game to play if you are going for that strategy in qualifying. You don't want to be too close to the person in front. You'll catch them, but in the same way, you don't want to be too far back that you just have no slipstream whatsoever. I'm really interested to see what the strategy might be for any of these cars, because I can't say that I've ever raced TCXs at Monza, so that's certainly going to be an interesting one to look at. It's Hubert Hauser for the AOA Racing car. That's the first one on the grid, or the first one on the track. It'll give us at least a representative lap time.
Yeah, and he'll have the free air. He can dictate his own pace, not being slowed down by any car in front of him. So we do see Ted Edwards not too far behind him, so it looks like Ted has found the correct spot to sit. Not too close, not too far. But yeah, now we can see him go after the Ascari towards the Parabolica to start his first lap, as we can see him just warming up his tyres, and he seems to he's done a bit too much hit the wall. Let's see if he can let go. Yeah, he's letting Ted Edwards go. So now Ted Edwards will be the first car to start his first flying lap, going through Parabolica towards first chicane.
Well, swapping cars from Hubert Hauser to Ted Edwards, he's going to be the first to give us that representative lap time in the 195 coming down the main straight. In a GT3 car, the scenery is going by a lot faster, and by now you're already thinking about your braking markers, but you're still waiting, and in a TCX car you have to brake a little bit earlier than the 150 board, just because you don't have those massive brakes that a GT3 car does. Pitching it through very clean exit onto the second sort of mini straight. You need to get the run here, through Curva Grande. You need to have a great exit, because if you don't, you really put yourself into the danger zone for being overtaken into the second chicane, because it's another heavy braking zone. It's another point where people are going to try and overtake you. Not electing to take any of the curbs is Ted Edwards. We might see some drivers really trying to launch it over them, but I think for now people are just trying to warm the tyres up. Stavlo won, and well, not Stavlo, we're not a Spa, ladies and gentlemen. I've gone completely lost. But anyway, coming out of the second point, Ted now actually taking some of the curbs, bouncing the car over, and then it's another long straight down to Ascari. Probably one of the scarier points in a TCX car. You really don't have any downforce to help you at all, really. So you've got to wait. You're waiting. You're looking for your braking, Mawson, and then there you go. Pitch it in over the curbs and through the Ascari chicane. Just understeer for days on these core tires, because they don't have any of the tire warmers. And then the run out, you've got your foot welded once again, and this is about as fast as a TCX car really goes. They are more road cars with cages and really designed, for that class racing, and that really has some. We've seen some great racing from these cars because of that, because they're all so close. Opting to run out wide is Ted Edwards in the 195 and the race to the line, which once again seems like forever. We're sat waiting for the respective time. What will it be? And it will be a Ted Edwards is 1.5 seconds slower. It's 206.4 for Ted. Andy Boardman has snuck in there in the 70, and he did a 204.952. So that is the current representative time to beat.
It seems we've completely missed Andy Boardman being the first out on track livery. Oh, that's quite something. The Grease Weasel Racing, quite the name there as well. But yeah, already being 1.5 seconds ahead of the next fastest car, Ted Edwards, has shown that Andy Boardman has some good pace in him. Also, just been seeing the Belgian Monza. Yeah, I think the corners you were looking for were Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2.
Yeah, if we just go through all the corner names, eventually we'll get it right.
Yeah, let's go through all the tracks.
Yeah, that's my strategy anyway.
Yeah, we'll find them at one point. As we now see Andy Boardman go through Lesmo 2 onto this little, well, I'll call this straight. Officially, there's a little corner kink in here, but I'd say it is just a long straight towards the Variante Ascari. As we can see, he is currently 0.09 of a second up, so he's going slightly faster already. As we see a couple more times come in, fastest about a second slower than what Andy Boardman has put in so far. As he goes quite wide, and that'll probably be a lap invalidation. Doesn't seem to be right now, but he has lost some time as we now look at Jan Yo in the I Like Titus 48. Once again, he's got those eyes on there, very scary, and I can remember from the Monday, those cars give me nightmares.
Well, taking a lot of curb does Jan, a bit more confident in the TCX BMW, but yeah, Jan always sort of opts for these liveries every single time. I mean, as a broadcaster commentator, it's easy to spot. You can't mistake Jan's car for any other car on the grid, really, in the 48 I Like Tater's livery car. But managing to have a big delta improvement already, 1.5 seconds up. And the other thing that I was being informed by Phil Roberts before we came on the air as well, these cars, they only seem to have around about 3 laps, and then the tires start to give off. So kind of now is your golden, opportune window to really push, because they take a lap to warm up. You have this blissful golden moment, and then the trailing off starts, and they've only got potentially where a lot of cars are on track, 1 more lap, because obviously the second half of qualifying is split for the GT4s that we haven't even seen yet, and you have to get your qualifying right, for a good start in both of these races. Running to the line, it's still going to be a big improvement for the 48. Where will he be? He'll go from 6th all the way up to 2nd, 0.3 of a second off Andy Boardman, but he's still got 1 more bite at it.
Yeah, and usually you'd see drivers go into the pits, grab a new set of tyres and go again, but with them only having 10 minutes to set their qualifying, they're not going to have enough time to warm up those tyres properly again to have another good shot at it. As we now look at Felix Laskowski going through Ascari, currently about half a second up, and he's even increasing even more through Ascari as he goes towards the Curva Grande. As he goes through, taking more speed. Oh, he's gone a bit wide there, and I think I've mistaken a couple corners there, as he's now gone through Lesmo 2 on towards Ascari, so excuse me for my mistake there. I was a bit squirrely out there. He's still 6 tenths up. He's losing a bit of time on exit as he goes towards Ascari. Still that high improvement, as we also see 4/10 improvement for Jan Yo further down the track. So you now actually see Laskowski go through Ascari, see if he can keep his speed high up and not make the mistake on exit here. A little bit slidey, but he still managed to keep his speed in as he now hurtles towards the Parabolica for the final turn of the lap. Nice early brake, as you said before, not the greatest brakes on these cars. So you see him turn in. If he can keep it planted, he can have a very good time here. Currently 6 tenths up, losing a little bit of time as he goes towards the outside of the Parabolica. Go to the inside, shorten the line as we seem to go towards the start-finish line. He goes to P7 still with a 2:06.130.
Yeah, now you can start to see for the 72, the tires going off, the squirreliness keep creeping in with that TCX car. They've got 1 more shot at it, and we saw some time loss was bled off there for the 72, so they've still got the potential to make up some places. Andy Boardman, meanwhile, while we've been talking about that, decided that his qualifying time wasn't just quite good enough, really, so he had to widen the gap a little bit more. A 2:04.5 is now what your pole sitter sits at, with Jan Yo 0.7 of a second behind. So a lot of the TCX cars are trailing, and that's what that says. Looking at the deltas now, a lot of people are not improving. They're just holding station or slightly falling off, because we've had that magical window. We've had that 3-lap wonder where the tires they're the optimum pressure, the optimum temperature, and they have that grip, and now they're just trailing off Andy Boardman rounds what will be Parabolica for the last time. I think he might get one more lap if he's close enough, and he will just, but he's actually decided to call it quits as Andy Boardman. It wasn't an improvement, it was still a good lap, but that will be his final one. Phil Webb also for the 395, rounding Parabolica. It's a big improvement. You've got to be careful not to run too far out to the edge. Not only will it bleed your time off, you can run an invalidation if you let the understeer creep in. It'll be an improvement, but it was about 2 to 3 tenths lost. And for Phil Webb, it's a 206.4, provisionally P8 overall.
Yeah, P8 overall for Phil Webb, so that is the grid for the TCX cars set as we now see all the GT4s go onto the track behind John O'Reilly here, who's the first GT4 out in his McLaren 650S. It's going to be interesting to see because this is a larger grid, so there's more of a chance to get your slipstream, but also because they're all different cars, every car, like we said before, has its different characteristics, especially the Alpines, being very quick in the corners, but not as much straight line speed. So it will be interesting to see how they will do this.
Speaking of cars that don't have straight line speed, have you noticed behind? We do have one in this grid, ladies and gentlemen. That is a Ginetta. That is the fiberglass wonder from Leeds, from basically where I hail. Those cars are built not too far away from where I grew up, so my entire life was spent seeing Ginettas either driving around or being moved around. Often saw the race team running around with their trucks when even when they had the GT3 car, if anyone remembers that weirdness that Ginetta briefly did. But the one thing that the Ginetta does not have in ACC and never has had, speed. It's got a gearbox that was homologated for small English tracks, Brands Hatch, Dalton Park, Silverstone maybe at a push. It doesn't really work when you bring it to such a long track. I mean, we've seen what happens in the Monday Championship when with the Ginettas when you take them to Bathurst. I don't really think it's going to be much different for that Polo Ginetta today here at Monza. It's another big speed track, but we ride on board with the rocket ship that is going to be John O'Reilly's McLaren, much faster coming down with the scenery, still not as fast as a GT3 car, mind you, and we might actually see John O'Reilly's have to brake a little bit earlier than TCX cars just because of the extra speed that you've got. You have to try to scrub the speed off as you go through the Primo Variante, trying to get traction down. The McLaren has a bit of a habit over time of overheating its rear tyres. That might come into the race, but with the 30 minutes you can still kind of manage it a little bit better, and you can kind of see how light the cars are on the steering. This mid-engine McLaren hard onto the brakes into the second Variante, trying to cut a little bit of the curves. You don't want to do too much. You do have some ride height in a GT4, but you still don't really want to, push your luck. This time we will get it right. This is the first Lesmo, trying to run it up just a little bit wider, get that better line out in the second Lesmo. You're looking for the 50 board, tip it in. A lot of drivers opt to miss that curve. You see some drivers want to bounce over it, and some cars just absolutely hate it, and it will destroy your run coming all the way down to the Ascari chicane. Long old run down once again. You're waiting for that mark. A lot of people use different marks, and then you're tipping it in. A little bit of a understeer moment there from the McLaren. You're trying to hook it in without touching the anti-cut curves. They will throw you off. They will upset the car, and then it's the run back down. Looking in the mirror, the poor Ginetta has just been left in the straight line speeds as the speedometer already climbs all the way up to almost 250. It's quite a good amount of speed in such a short run. And then you're rounding the Parabolica. You've got to not let the car run out wide, especially on these early laps. You can grain the tyres here very, very easy. And for the 699 running around, the provisional pole will be a 158.5, 6 seconds faster than the TCX cars. But Brim Lilith out of nowhere, the 115, the M4 GT4 has banged in a 158.5.
Yeah, especially impressive that he already got that. But as we can also see in the top right, the track is only still fast, so maybe during this qualifying session we'll see it go to optimum with the track constantly improving. We'll probably see the times just drop massively. So now look at Tom Grimes, Rai Loves Comic Sans. That is some name. In a 42 M4. Sorry?
There has been some names, some teams have changed their names, knowing that me and Ryan Gill have come back to the broadcast. So Tom Bryan has decided to opt his name to Rai Loves Comic Sans. I think the word that I can't repeat on air, ladies and gentlemen, it was he will, he will have words. It's something along those effects. And I know that Grim Lilith has changed their team name as well to the Ryan Mawson Fan Club. So I have an M4 fan club apparently on this race.
Yeah, you got your big plans on track today, so they hope your only fans. So I guess they'll hope you give them some preferential treatment here. But look, too bad for them. You're not the only one in the comms box today. So now look at Will Stevenson's Corvette going through the Lesmo 2, going a bit wide there. So I think that was a bit too wide as he hit the gravel on the outside there. He'll probably have to restart his lap. So actually, looking at the timing here, it was still valid, though that must have lost him quite a bit of time. Now look at Omar Elano in the Alpine, one of the slower cars as we discussed before. And let's see what we're seeing here now.
Race replay from the 30, going down into the first chicane will be an issue. Well, apparently, we're not entirely sure what happened. Don't worry, Ryan's still getting used to all the buttons. Trust me, Ryan. It's the big black one. If you press that button, stuff happens. Well, at least this is what Stewie tells me. Sometimes Stewie also takes all my buttons away because I can't be trusted with them. But for Santo, for the SRI Esports Alpine, for the little 94 running up to the line, it looks like a good improvement so far. It could be a provisional pole, and there you go, a 158.1. This is what I was talking about. The Alpines can do some great things in the qualifying sessions, but I just don't know if they're going to manage to hold it off in the race. But we'll have to see what the Split 2 driver can do. If you've already noticed, we have the white and the red number boards. This is normally what would be dictated as AM and a Pro car, but we're running it as the two splits, as it were. So you've got Split 1 of GT4 and TCX, and Split 2 of them.
Yeah, and that was quite some time gained by Danny Santo there, going into the 158.1, faster than all the pro drivers have been able to do so far. Looking at the timing sheet, however, we can see a lot of drivers improving, so the track is actually evolving and times are dropping. With the fastest, the biggest improvement right now that I can see was Javier Gonzalez, currently 0.5 faster, as we now see Johnny Razor go through the Parabolica. See if he can improve his time. He's currently about a tenth up, losing a little bit of time going through the corner as it goes up towards the line, and improves by about a tenth to a 158.48, but it wasn't really that much better.
Well, it's going to be, I think, one more go around. I think it's just a couple of seconds too short for the 699 gated line, unless they have an epic lap. But as he says, that early blistering time slowly being eaten away. The 741 and another one of our Camaros here in the field comes across the line, a 2-minute 1 hold station in P14, but nudging ever closer to that Ginetta in front of the 27, which I once again mentioned that maybe it might have some okay quality time, but it's going to be difficult in the race. William Stevenson, Connection Loss Racing car, had some great pace in practice, still has some great pace in the qualifying. 2/10 off the provisional pole in the Alpine, and still going at great guns. We'll have one more go at it in the 108 before the checkered flag drops on this session.
Yeah, one shot indeed. Currently looking at all the timings, the fastest I can now see is Carlos Calatayud, currently about half a tenth, but he's just lost a little bit. The same with Johnny Razor, as we're now looking at the Aston Martin of Calatayud in the temporal name Motorsports, going out of Lesmo 2 towards Variante Ascari. Before you have, of course, the little kink, and actually once again messed up all the corners, because that was Lesmo 2. Honestly, these corners all look the same to me. I don't know if you've got the same problem here, Ryan.
Well, we'll get there eventually. Monza is one of those tracks that is easy to learn because of the nature of the corners. Hard to master because of the nature of the corners. But Carlos Galati at the number 30, the Aston Martin throwing it over the curbs, knowing that this is the last shot that they really have to gain, to get up the road. Still about 0.4 of a second gain. They've managed to gain just a little bit of time coming out onto the straight, and that's all you need in a GT4. Just that little bit. You gain a couple of tenths here and there. Remember not to outbrake yourself and not to run the car out wide. And then there we go. For the last time, Carlos Galati runs up to the line. It's going to be a good improvement from P10 all the way up to P3, right behind John Areza, who did improve his lap and did still get one more bite at it because the checkered flag graphic has not shown. Matthew Malcolm for the Seb Danke Racing, I think that's how you're going to pronounce it, races to the line, and that's knocks the Aston Martin off that bottom step of the podium. P3 goes the 199 Porsche.
Yeah, we still see Danny Santo in the split 2, Alpine in P2. However, he's gone into the pits, so everyone else still has a chance to overtake him there. Grim Lilith currently in P6, just over a tenth up, as he now goes, I'm now going to say through Lesmo 1, as he now goes to the second right-hander of Lesmo 2, and I've finally got it right. I've got it right, ladies and gentlemen. Now actually onto that little back straight with a little left-hand kink in there before the Variante Ascari as it goes underneath the bridge of the old Monza track.
Yeah, the old Monza track, it still exists, I think, in most parts. That must have been terrifying to race on.
Yeah, that banking was insane. As we now see Grim go out of Ascari, bit wobbly there. It's currently back even with the time he did before. Maybe he can still get a little bit of extra time going through the Parabolica, last right-hander off this track before you hit the start-finish line. Keeps it quite tight, but goes a bit wide at the end, trying to keep the speed through, but it looks like he's about a tenth slower, but he had a good exit there, and it's just not enough to improve. The only one on track, I think, now is John Eraser, but that's something.
Well, Grim Lilith showing the frustration there, obviously had some more time in that BMW, and I could say that you definitely could see that, it was just a little bit wobbly from the GT4 driver, but it's going to be interesting to see what Grim can do in the race. And this is a part of time where we show you the standings as they stand. This is after, of course, round 1. So you have in GT4 Pro, Matthew Malcolm sits on top of the Roos in that Porsche 718 with 78 points. John Areza right behind them. It's going to be a battle of those two once again. Carlos Galati not too far behind either on 60 points in the Aston Martin. Grim Lilith, who would have been, really wanted to gain some points today in that M4, sits just outside of the podium position in that fourth place in the M4. William Stevenson for the Chevy Camaro, 42 points to his name, rounds out your top 5. Mike Redford just outside it on 6 with 41 points, very close between those two. Tom Bryant is your 7th place at BMW with 40 points. Neil Pimlott, our highest placed Alpine, is P8, and Vida Marcos has currently 0 points in the 9th place position. And this is the GT4s, but the AM class, or Split 2, if you want to call it that, and it is dominated by Alpines. Javier Gonzalez has 74, running away with the championship from there. And then Dos Ramos in the other, your second Alpine, 58 points. Radu is our first Mercedes AMG GT4, 56 points to them. Matt Prior in the Ginetta is here tonight, will gain some more points, just behind on 54. And then you have Ronaldo rounding out your top 5, another Alpine on 42. Danny Santo, another one of the Alpines, believe they are also here tonight, 37 points. Yamash in the second Camaro GT4, we've seen them in qualifying, 35 points, also getting very close in the second split. And then you have the 169 Aguedio. I'm going to butcher your name. You're going to have to tell me after the broadcast how you pronounce yours. That is another Alpine with 34 points to their name. And Stefan Miller is the last point scoring Aston with 23. Sarah Stan currently is in the championship, but it's on 0 points. Same with Montelio and Villemas, both in the championship, but have 0 points. And the two dashes are people that have signed out of the championship.
For the TCX Pro class, we have Christopher Strepe in first with 74 points, closely followed by our own Benjamin Harmon, 71, followed by 1 point, Andy Boardman in third. Jordan Daly has 52, Aaron Jackson, 43 in fifth. Sixth is Ted Edwards with 34, 1 point behind is Jan Yo. Jelle Verstraeten, 32, Rafael Yule, 28, and Rob Franke, 26. Continuing on with the pro class is Claudio Jaramillo, Jon Schulze, and Martin Lawrence with 0 points, and the dashes have signed out of the championship. Then going to our AM class, Harold Klippelman, 70 points, Tojan Anderson, 68, Hubert Hauser, 60, Phil Webb, 40, Andreas Vik Osland, 23, Felix Laskowski, we have seen him today, has 0 points yet, and Versakov has signed out.
So some people are going to have, some big points hauls and some big shake-ups really in this race, as we're already on to the formation lap. It will be John Araser to lead them down in the 699 McLaren, and I think the name of this game with this sort of formation lap for both of these classes is going to be heat in the tires, heat in the brakes. You need to get something into them, because neither of these classes have tire warmers. They will be stone dead cold, and you want to have at least something going into turn one, because realistically at Monza, any small amount of heat that you put into them will be completely dissipated by the time you've got to the second chicane. You're not going at full racing speed, going through the first chicane, and then you've got this, you've got the long sweeping right-hander where you're not putting any heat into the tires or the brakes, so they just all cool off again. So it's going to be, that is going to be the name of the game. Andy Boardman's going to lead your TCX grid away, and sometimes in these, mixed sort of lobby races, it's actually difficult being the leader of the second pack, because you will be bunched up into the slower people at the start into turn one, and you can find yourself under attack whether you like it or not. And there's going to be, looking back at some of the sort of what we would call second split. People will call them man plug classes, I call them second split. Look at all of the Alpines. It's going to be Santo who leads us off in that, and this man Javier Gonzalez wanting to gain a little bit of the a little bit more points. I've also noticed that all of the Alpines, that explains why we've got so many of them, are all the same team. I don't know how I didn't notice this before.
Yeah, I didn't notice that before as well. But also,
team picture.
They got a team picture.
I mean, that would be a good team picture. Look, you've got 1, 2, 3 in a line. It's only the Santo who broke formation. He's just too fast, lads. It's just too fast for your picture.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting with Santo there in P2 between all the split one drivers. So it's going to be interesting. He's going to fight heavily trying to get that race win, or if we maybe see him drop behind a little bit, let the pro drivers or split one drivers fight it out a little bit. But what we did see last week is that some of the faster TCX drivers do tend to be fighting with the lower GT4s. So that might be very interesting at the start to see what they do through the first chicane.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier, is that you have to make that decision then, because you put yourself in a situation where you could slow yourself up, you could be brought under attack whether you like it or not, and it's going to be difficult for the TCX drivers to kind of work out what they want to do at the start of the race. Once the race has kind of got underway and people have got up some pace, then obviously the GT4s will, no matter what happens, they will be leaving the TCX cars in a straight line. So you slowly gain your space from that, but it's going to be madness at the start It always is, and it is Monza after all. The sun is only rising here 6:30 a.m. Nice cold track, but a track that is still not even ticked over to optimum yet. It's still fast here at the Temple of Speed. Won't be helping anyone's tyres. You can see people in the background still trying to warm them up on the formation as we're 2x2, and it's green flag for I say green flag. It's the camera panning by, waiting for it. Look how long the run is, and there you go. Now it's the green flag for John O'Reilly, the 699. The Alpine immediately trying to tuck behind. Right up, you need to get that slipstream as everyone's trying to fan out and get some space.
Yeah, we now can actually see Danny Santo is actually looking to take the lead into turn 1 and try and fight for that race win, but we'll see how long he can hold up. As for now, the top 3 have gone through cleanly, but we'll have to wait until the rest of the pack has gone through turn 1. As of now, it does look quite clean, as the top of the grid has already moved out of the chicane and into the Curva Grande, going towards the second chicane. As you can already see, the top 3 having taken quite a bit of a gap from the rest.
Well, the top 3 is breaking away, and so far we're going to have to touch on wood, obviously, but we don't have any yellow flags. You can have it sometimes coming into the second chicane. Still 2x2. That's one of the Alpines. That's one of the SRI cars in the background fighting with, I believe that's Grim Lilith in the M4, having to go defensive on one of the Alpines, and it is, in fact, there you go, Grim Lilith down to 7th. Gonzalez having to muscle around, but then you end up in the straight line battles, and once again another one of the Alpines in the background under attack from the Mercedes GT4, as we're still trying to jostle for position. And in the background, I'm looking as well at the TCX class. It's been Jan Yo and Jordan Daly who's managed to overthrow Andy Boardman.
There must have been something that happened in that first chicane. Probably Andy Boardman being stuck behind some of the GT4s, not able to put the speed in that he wants. As we now look at Jordan Daly looking at the back of the car of Jan Yo as they go through Ascari towards the first time towards the Parabolica. Gone a bit squirrely there, but we see one of the Alpines there go very slow as the TCX horde is now encroaching on him.
That's 1, 2, 3 of the Alpines off. They're all bunched up together. Look, there you go. They've ended up sort of muscled into the TCX battle, and now that's almost invited Jordan Daly to look up the inside of Jan Yo there, you know, just while everyone's still sorting themselves out. All 3 SRI esports cars have all ended up together. We might get a bit of a race replay of what happened, and in fact, they're already mixed up into the TCX battle coming out of Lesmo 2.
That's actually quite early. I expected them to be staying with the rest of the GT4 pack for a bit longer. But yeah, here we can see that even though the Alpine's not the fastest in the straight line, they do tend to fight the TCXs on exit there, going out of Lesmo 2. But yeah, I really wonder what's happened to them. The 89 goes wide into Ascari, not getting his braking correct, and that's why he's fallen back. As we see the other Alpine probably buggered it on exit and now also being swallowed up by the horde.
The one Alpine had an issue going into Ascari, one Alpine had an issue coming out of Ascari. Well, it seems that Alpines and the Ascari chicane don't really mix, at least in the early race when they've got some fuel on board and probably cold tyres. Probably will take a little bit longer before these cars really sort of come on song. You've still got Santo trying to hang on to the rocket ship that is John Araser, but it's just not happening with the 699. This is what I was saying in the race. The Alpine can have some great pace, but it just can't hang on to a car with that amount of straight line speed. But you've got to keep a level head if you're John Araser. You've got the lead, you're pulling out, but you still have 26 minutes. And GT4 cars are not really cars that are very easy to drive.
For me, I quite like them. You need to get used to them, especially with the cold tyres coming out of the pits, but the same is the case for the TCX cars. But yeah, definitely now you've got Danny Santo trying to keep the honour of the Alpines high, with the rest of them falling all the way back down the grid, though they now seem to have been going ahead of all the TCX cars, though we now see a little bit of a gap form between the two classes.
And it means now that the TCX guys can kind of breathe and have their own race, which is starting to form in the background. It's Janyo trying desperately to run away. You've got to break the toe and break the slipstream, as you can see over to the right-hand side as we flick back to the front. It's Matthew Malcolm having a big dive on the brakes, trying to go from 9th to 7th place, but there wasn't enough brakes in that Porsche to get it to stop for turn 1, and I think they'll have to end up giving the position that back as I think they're still P7 in front of that Alpine, so we'll have to see what happens to them. There you go, letting off and giving the position back. The Ginetta tucked right up behind the Alpine. It's the battle of the slow classes here. Look at that, the Ginetta looking to the inside. It's going to be a battle of the brakes, but both cars have got great brakes. The 69 defending hard. The 27 Matt Pryor's going to try and look for the cutback, put himself up on the inside into Lesmo 1, and he is alongside all the while as well the Mercedes of Radu, just kind of watching this battle. He's poised to pick the best moment, and that best moment might be now. It's ended up where the Mercedes is alongside but backs out coming into Lesmo 2, and that gives Matt Pryor just a bit of breathing room, and something terrible has happened to the 169 Alpine as well.
Yeah, I think that might have been the Mercedes then hit. Was that the Mercedes that spun out? No, the Mercedes is still going there. But yeah, with the Mercedes and the Alpine going very close together there, you can only imagine that one of them was hit at the rear and spun round because of that. As we now see, the Mercedes should be having a bit more speed, but here we have a look at what happened to the Dunker Sepp car. Or Sepp Dunker, one of the two. Oh yeah, he hit the curb there on the inside, bit too early. Shoots you wide in the air. You haven't travelled through the grass. As we now look at Matthew Malcolm trying to get back up the grid where he thinks he belongs.
Yeah, those anti-cut curbs are still pretty vicious on the inside. They will grab your splitter, they will throw you to the outside, and this is just like sad really for the Porsche Air driver, the 69 SRI Sports. He just can't do anything. Look at the speed of the Mercedes, and there's nothing that you can do to defend this apart from do something like this. You lay on the brakes. You have to use that. You know, your car's party trick in the Alpine is the brakes. It is the handling. You have to play that all the time to really keep yourself out of that danger zone. And Dos Ramos managing to do that very, very well. Puts the Mercedes to the outside, knows he can't go around all the way that way, and once again the battle is put on pause. But you see what I mean? Every single braking zone, Radu's going to look for it.
Yeah, he'll be looking for it every turn, but as you said before, the brakes on an Alpine are very good compared to the Mercedes, so I'll have to hope that once he gets a very good exit, probably what he did last lap, trying to do it through Lesmo 2 is maybe not the best option. What he should do is wait until he can get on the longer straight to be very close behind him and then try to overtake. But we've seen that Dos Ramos has got a good strategy here, good tactic to keep that Mercedes behind, as we saw him using the brakes and the handling of the Alpine going into the first chicane.
And Radu's also got Redford behind him, and Dos Ramos will kind of hope that Redford starts to battle the Mercedes, slows them up a little bit, gives them a little bit more breathing space, so that they can actually do some work. And the 69 now trying to slowly work themselves back up to the back of the 27. It's Matt Pryor, and that will be a place in class for position. It'll be the second place overall. The DeSanto has just gone up the road. I don't think there's any chance of that so far. And here we go, flicking back up to the pro battle. It's William Stevenson, the big Camaro. You're trying to tuck in to get some slipstream. I don't know if tuck in is the word I'd use on a Camaro. The Alpine is also all over. That is the 94 of DeSanto. Your AM-class leader is getting well into this fight. The 108's deep on the brakes, but he hasn't got enough brakes to make the corner.
Yeah, got a little bit too tight for both cars there going into the first corner. But yeah, it's now a bit of a shame for Danny Santo, the one last Alpine up there at the top of the grid, trying to keep the honours going for that Alpine in the SRI team. But he's really keeping close with the two split one drivers in front. But yeah, I think it was only a matter of time before they got them, because they got that straight line speed, and with possibly being the slightly stronger drivers, yeah, it was only a matter of time before they were able to overtake that Alpine.
And while all this is happening as well, looking up the road as well, Grim Lilith isn't a million miles away in that 115 as well. I'll be kind of hoping that that Will Stevenson starts to battle Calatiad and maybe Santo gets involved, because then they can start to be drawn back into this battle. In the TCX class, things have I was going to say have held station. Well, there's one thing that's held station. Jan Yo has completely taken off from this class. There you go, with the eyes on the livery, just about seeing it as we go through Lesmo 1. But this battle has swapped around. Jordan Daly has fallen behind Andy Boardman, but has not fallen off the back. He's hot on the heels of Jordan Daly. And for the AM class, it's still the 17 leading it. Ted Edwards isn't that far behind, and you've still got a big group of the AM class TCXs just out of shot. They're just coming around Lesmo 2 now. So still very close in the TCX class, apart from Jan Yo, who's managed to, you know, gel and find something with the car. He's almost 3 seconds up the road, 3.5 seconds in fact.
Yeah, no, he must have done something well. Yeah, I see John Daly go just wide through his car right there, getting a bit of the grass and the gravel. So we'll see him fall behind Andy Boorman just that little bit, as Calatiad has had a problem somewhere. That's not a good looking on it. Yeah, so we might be able to see what happened to him a bit later. But is that Will Stevenson behind, or was that the AM driver?
I believe that is your second Camaro, because that's the V8 Racing livery. But a big crash has befallen the number 30. That is a very broken Aston Martin of Carlos Calatiad. Has had an issue in the Ascari chicane, and that will take them completely out of that battle. Will shuffle everyone up. So now you have Danny Santo has managed to claim not only the top step of his class, his race, but also the third step of the overall podium, and he hasn't fallen off the back of Will Stevenson either.
No, he's keeping up very well with the Corvette of Will Stevenson. It's a little bit of a shame for Grim Lilith, because he'd be hoping that there would still be a fight between the three that were in front of him before instead of the two now. But yeah, we'll probably see through every chicane that Alpine trying to have a look on the inside, trying to overtake Stevenson in the Corvette. As they both now go through Ascari, this is where the Alpine would be the strongest. But yeah, after that you've got that straight again where the Corvette will use its power in that V8 engine to just get ahead again.
Well, both drivers were quite wide. They had a little bit of a wiggle trying to get the cars kind of settled and back onto the main straight. But I mean, look at how much more corner speed you can use in an Alpine. You really can start to close up to your opponent, but then you end up back on the straight where it's, your tiny little four-cylinder turbo don't really have much to say when you have a great honking V8. I can't even see. This is what we need our American commentator Jesse Lee here to tell us what that is. I believe it's 6-point-something liters, but actually with the slipstream, the Alpine manages to reel him in towards the end of the straight. That's very surprising. That's not something I would have called.
Well, on the other hand, if you look at the size of that thing, like, it will punch a big hole into the air, and I think Danny Santos is using the full, well, as in another organisation I know, they call it the suck. So you get sucked right into the car in front. Yeah, with a big car like that, yeah, I'm on one hand not really surprised, but you'd think that the power in that Corvette would be more than enough to build up a gap. As we now see Danny Santo trying to look on the inside, but the moment he gets out of that slipstream, you just see him lose the speed.
Yeah, Will actually thought about going defensive there, looking a bit back further. The battle of the late breakers has come back in, and the Ginetta has managed to fire themselves up on the inside of the second chicane, trying to get the switchback maneuver. And I think they were just alongside, and they have Matt Pryor back up into the 7th place with Dos Ramos still hot on the heels. So this battle is just chopping and changing, and these cars are very, very similar, the Ginetta and the Alpine. I think the Ginetta has probably shorter gear ratios, but the brakes are just as good, if not better.
Yeah, and then also with that shorter gear ratio, they can use a bit more acceleration compared to the Alpine. But this will be a fight to watch out throughout the rest of this race, and probably also the next one to come after. Because yeah, they're quite similar cars, slightly different. It's not as big a difference as we have further up front with the Corvette and the Alpine. So you do see a little bit of that extra speed that the Alpine's got compared to the Ginetta. But yeah, these guys will keep on switching back and forth, I think, throughout this race.
Oh, the Ginetta's getting very, very close. Matt Pryor definitely knows where the front bumper of his car is. Getting as close as he can to the 69, not letting them escape. And now once the Ginetta's in the slipstream, you get a little bit more acceleration. But the problem that you get with the Ginetta is you've hit the rev limiter now. And look at the speed. Look at that Porsche go. But look at how much longer it is before when the brake lights light up on the Porsche to when the Ginetta actually starts braking. That is the problem at Monza that you are battling. You will hit the rev limiter and then everyone just breezes by you like you're nothing.
Yeah, and we saw it also on the Monday with the Ginettas at Bathurst. Like, once you reach that limiter, doesn't matter if you're in a slipstream or not, that's just where the speed ends, and that's where all these other cars will start to overtake. But yeah, as we can see here, already encroaching. Oh, she goes way too hot into the second chicane, fully hits the curves. But yeah, I'll have to let this go as we now see a replay of what happened. Just a little bit too late on the brakes. Let's go to not crash into everyone. Fully hits it, and yeah, that's bound to happen then.
I didn't know that the Dukes of Hazzard had come to visit us at Italy. That was a moment where you have to kind of make the call as a driver to let go of the brakes in an accident and just straight line yourself. Matt Pryor didn't manage to, didn't touch anybody. He just managed to lose a lot of time and probably gave Dos Ramos the scare of their life, having a white Ginetta fly through your windscreen. I mean, as a racing driver, it's not really something you expect to see, but it's put them back now. They've swapped one battle with an Alpine for another battle with an Alpine. It's the same livery, it's the same car, but a different driver. It's now Rolando in the 89 that's going to have their go at the Ginetta driver, who's still trying to recover from that sort of little off there. Looking back to the front battle, this is for your P2. I'd say P2. It's the P1 in the AM class, P2 over all of the race. We'll see William Stevenson still having to defend from Santo, who's really not dropped off the back of it. Brim Lilith isn't too far away, and in the TCX class, everyone is still holding station. Jan Yo has managed to completely ditch Andy Boardman, who's pulled out just a little bit from Jordan Daly, and it's the 17 who still leads your AM class in that race.
Yeah, and we see it's a very good fight by this Alpine in the split 2 Alpine in P3 overall currently, to be able to keep up with the speed of that Chevrolet throughout everywhere. Like, as long the moment that car hits the accelerating, still being able to stay in that slipstream, as we now look at Ramfi Radu in the QV Motorsports AMG Mercedes fighting it out with Dos Ramos in the 69 as he's overtaken him and trying to look forward towards the Porsche of Mike Redford.
Yeah, having to keep the eyes forward, but also it's, at any moment like this, you're being hounded by that little Alpine. You know that you've got the power on the straights to easily sort of pull away, but at the same time, you always do have to be wary. The AMG is also quite a weird car. It's in the background. That is one of the Alpines, and that is Matt Pryor. Have come tangled. It's Rolando and the SRI Esports Alpine. And in fact, they lost it on themselves coming out of Lesmo 2. And what we saw was the avoiding action.
Yeah, and then he almost hit his teammate just behind him as well, who had to take a very acute right turn in order to avoid collision with his teammate. It's a bit of a shame because that could have been a good fight, as we saw before, between Matt Pryor and Dos Ramos. But here we now have a look at Felix Laskowski on the back of Hubert Hauser to try and overtake through the Ascari correction, the second chicane towards the Lesmo 1 and 2. And we can see them constantly looking where there's an option, but Hauser just passed the car in the middle of the road. And this is really going to be a question of, can you get the better exit towards the Ascari chicane, or will it not be enough? As he tries to take the inside, tries to force Hauser a little bit wide, both going up on the accelerator. It's neck and neck. I think Laskowski might just have him, but it's very close here indeed. Now, it's Hauser that looks to have a bit more speed on exit, as he'll have the inside for the first turn into Ascari. But it seems like Laskowski was later on the brakes, being able to hold it through in Ascari. Goes a little bit wide though, but he's taken the lead for now.
but that's really compromised his exit, and it's still side by side between the 72 and the 79. This is for your P2 in the AM split of TCXs, so it's still quite a lot of points. And there you go, the 72 having to drop back a position, just didn't have the run, still looking up the inside, trying to tuck the nose of that TCX down to the apex, you know, to give themselves that little bit of space, little bit of a look, trying to run it out wide. And this is where, you know, you start to eye up your opponent, especially when you're in matched machinery. Like you said, like now, you're not going to gain or lose any time on your fellow BMW. You're one of the same. You're thinking about braking points and how much more confident am I in the brakes on this car than the person in front. But they fall back, line astern. It's going to be the 79, takes it a little bit deep. Oh, there's just enough space for the 72 to nip up the inside. And the move that happened to him, it's happened back up into the 20th position, the P2 in AM.
Yeah, it seems like every time the car in front just tends to go a little bit too deep or have some understeer go wide, as we now look at at Matt Pryor in P11, still fighting back Yamash in the car behind. Seems to have dropped away from the Alpine of Gonzalez in front as he's trying to catch Mike Redford, though he does seem to have fallen back a bit from him as he tries to keep that Chevrolet behind as they go through Parabolica. And this is where the Ginetta will struggle in the straight line with the Chevrolet behind.
Well, they might have just enough room, Matt Pryor coming across the line, but it's around about now on the track where you start to hit the rev limiter and look, the Porsche's closing. Is Redford going to look to the inside? Not this time, managing to have just enough room, but the 27 has outbraked themselves. They're going to have to take to the escape road as well, as even Mike Redford in the background, and the 95's all crossed up, trying to get the car slowed down and through the first chicane. This is as well in the part of the race where a lot of people's tires are starting to, you know, really starting to degrade. The fuel load's gone off, yes, but also the tires have started to really go off.
Yeah, you certainly notice in this shorter races that even though it is a shorter race, they will really rack those tires to their absolute maximum, knowing that they only need to last for half an hour instead of your usual 1 hour race. As we now look at Dos Ramos trying to get past the Mercedes of Radu, getting sucked up right behind him, hoping to get the better exit and using the slipstream to overtake him towards the Ascari chicane to announce the bridge of the old Monza track come in view. And that Mercedes does seem to have a little bit more pace compared to that Alpine, as he has to brake a bit earlier, almost some evading action from Dos Ramos, trying not to hit the rear as he gets a bit more speed through Ascari. But then once again we'll go into a straight, and as long as that Mercedes has a good exit, probably won't be catched.
Well, elected to take none of the curbs or any of the Alpine drivers now. You know, you're trying to preserve the run just with the suspension, but I mean, look at how much the AMG can pull out, but look at how much the Alpine can close right back up on the brakes. Still trying to tuck it to the inside, and it's a little bit of a wobble there from the AMG. Radu just having a little bit of a wobble there. Obviously felt something in the car, had to catch it. Tires starting to go off, and it's Dos Ramos for the 69 Alpine that's pulled out, I think, enough of a lead that they're going to be outside of the danger zone come turn 1 again. So it's back up into 7th place, P2 in your AM class for the GT4s.
Yeah, that was a great move by Radu, being able to, by Dos Ramos, being able to stick behind that AMG for that long throughout the lap, also through the Parabolica, and then just being able to capitalize on the mistake by the AMG. As there is a yellow flag just off Ascari as we see Jordan Daly's gone round. Is that together with Andy Ball, or is that someone else? As we now have a look what's happened here. See him go out of Lesmo 1, so it will probably be a bit later on in the replay. So they now go through Lesmo 2. So he's already gone a bit wide. Sorry.
197 still catching up here. That's Jan Yo still way out in front. And your, I believe that's your AM class leader in the background. Coming up to Ascari, this is going to be the problem zone where the yellow flag was waved. The 197 that brakes hard, tips it in. We're still waiting. Could it be an issue from Andy Boardman in front? Nope. It's just a snap from the 197 and hard into the wall, hard nose first into the wall. In fact, that's your M-Class leader who's also had an issue.
Yeah, and then they both seem to have lost it there just on the exit, or as they try and go at the same time, causing more trouble for themselves. As I don't think they'll both be too happy with what the other one tried to do. But yeah, now they just have to keep their heads down and continue on pushing forward and try and get the best result this race, and then try again after another 6 minutes for race 2. So Johnny Reyes has also been able to pull away a 5-second lead on Will Stevenson, who has been fighting that Alpine of Danny Santo throughout this race. So he's even catching now the back end of that TCX class. So this has been a quite easy race for Johnny Reyes.
Yeah, for the 699, it's been, or will be if you can hang on to it, a lights to flag day. And that's also, with that crash, it's promoted it's changed up the TCX field a little bit. It's now the 17 who leads your class in the AM, so it was your leader in the TCX cars, showing that, you know, those cars are starting to degrade at a rapid rate, really. They really don't have the grip, and they might be just a little bit harder through some of the more tricky parts. And speaking of cars that are degrading and struggling, the 699 Dos Ramos, it's an SRI Esports Alpine, just seeming to have problems with the back end, tipping it in and ending up spinning around and hard into the wall. So this is the 69 rejoins the circuit all the way down in 12th places. They're going to lose that point to the Camaro as well.
Yeah, it was very closely followed by Radu in the 63 Mercedes, so I don't know if there was any contact before. It could have been, but maybe we'll see that later in a replay, as Johnny Reyes has already gone past the back of the TCX field, as we now still keep looking at Santo trying to catch the back of that Chevrolet from Stevenson. This battle has been raging throughout this race. I wonder how William Stevenson is doing with all this pressure from the Alpine behind.
Well, I think it's definitely going to be an interesting race for Will. You know, it's one that I don't think he would have called necessarily, being having to defend from an Alpine when you've got a Camaro. If you're going to put cars together and say what would give good racing, this is not a matchup that I would have ever called. It's been some very close racing all of the time. You still as well got Grim Lilith in the 115. It's P3 in Pro, P4 on the road, and they managed to secure at least a little bit of a space between them and Tom Bryant in the 42. We also kind of had a quiet race. We haven't had to talk much about Tom Bryant, and it's the battle of the Alpines. It's now two teammates on one another. Who's the 89? Rilano's getting the best tow there from the Camaro and his teammate. Looks to the inside, is late on the brakes, but then it compromises your exit. You might actually find that the 69 has a little bit of a look back, but the 741 hasn't had the greatest exit either, and now they're in the danger zone of the pack of two Alpines.
Yeah, especially coming up to that braking zone for the second chicane. Being this close for the Alpine behind is actually going side by side, trying to squeeze the Chevrolet a little bit. Later on the brakes, it should be what he's done, but he's able to take it on the outside there, as he now already has the second Alpine for comfort, as they also have a better exit than Yarmush in the Chevrolet, and they'll probably take that position going into Lesmo 1.
And we're getting from scenes of disbelief from our broadcaster Ryan Gill, wondering how such a tiny car can outmuscle such a massive Camaro. And well, we're seeing similar scenes up the front. The 94 Danny Santo has been sat behind Will Stevenson for so long, has finally made the move stick. Obviously had the better run out of Ascari, has made it stick into the Parabolica, but they're coming up to lapped TCX traffic, and they've got to get themselves out of the out of the danger zone now, trying to use the slipstream of the TCX to keep them in contention. And it's going to be late on the brakes as the Camaro comes swooping in, avoiding action from Santo. Will Stevenson managed to get the car stopped somehow. A little bit of a wiggle on the outside, though, means that they're still going to be side by side. But how Will Will Stevenson got that big Camaro stopped. I think that's both feet stood on the brakes and pulling on the steering wheel. You need to use all of your manpower to stop that car, but they're still side by side coming into the second chicane. I was going to say maybe the Alpine will be later on the brakes, but Will Stevenson seems to be very happy with the brakes in his Camaro and has managed to get back past. A little bit of a gravel kicked up there will hurt Santos' run, and Will Stevenson gets back, but look who's this has brought into the battle. Grim Lilith, just been sat there all race thinking now is my time.
Yeah, and it was already very close between Stevenson and Santo going into that first chicane as they both tried to go for the inside, but Santo taking the safe way out and going on the outside. But yeah, them squabbling that much has brought Grim Lilith back into this fight, only a second behind these two, with the slipstream of 2 cars now. This could be a very fun last lap, depending on when the leader crosses the start-finish though. There should be 1 extra lap after this.
Yeah, I think we're going to get one more lap. It's not a great run though from Santo in the Alpine. He's left himself open, and here comes the BMW M4, a car that if you're going to pick a GE4 to have straight line speed, well, the great big honking straight 6 of that car is one to pick, but it doesn't really have the best brakes, and I know that for a fact, having run this car 1 season. Not only does it not have brakes, it likes to cook them, even though if you have the ducts quite wide, it's not really a car that is easiest to learn in that respect. The flash of the lights having come back up to Will Stevenson. It's now for the last lap, it's going to be this, but Grim Lilith has to hold off Santo because we've seen what that car can do. The BMW slowly closing in, the Alpine having a little bit of a look, and it's going to be a last lap 3-way battle for second place.
Yeah, and it's just getting tighter and tighter every time they go through a corner, with the M4 getting closer to the Chevrolet and the Alpine being that good on the brakes, getting closer every turn they get into a braking zone. But yeah, I've also driven that BMW M4 GT4, and it's been a lot of fun against some of the other guys. But yeah, this is some fight we want to see the end of. Though it's also going to be a question, is that TCX in front going to interfere with this fight, or will they be able to get out of the way? As the Alpine is trying to overtake Grim Lilith on the inside, going into less run 1, just about doesn't have the speed to get past. And yeah, that's back to line of stern.
Defensive moves there from the 115 had to knew that if they left the door open they would be under attack from the Alpine. Lights ablaze as the TCX car ahead. You're going to have to get by it before the Ascari chicane. It's going to be just about for Grim. Cuts the nose off of the TCX to give it just a little bit less toe to the Alpine behind, and it's going to be the last time through the Ascari chicane. You have to keep it clean. If you can get a good run, you might even be able to have a go at the Camaro ahead. It's been a good run from Grim Lilith. Going to look to the outside line. It's Will Stevenson and Grim Lilith side by side. The BMW has a little bit more of a run. I don't think the nose is going to be ahead though before the Parabolica. They're still side by side. And meanwhile, all this time while this is happening, John Araser has won your first race. It's just been a lights to flag victory. But back to the battle here. It's 3 wide. It's a run to the line. It's Grim Lilith on the inside. Will Stevens has managed to hold it out, and Santo comes in just behind. That is a fantastic finish and a little bit of a boop.
Yeah, just a little bit of a boop at the end, but that was an awesome battle to see, as we now see Javier Gonzalez go through the last corner for the final time of race 1 in P8, P3 in the AM class. So that's some good points for him as well. So now look at the leader of the TCX Pro class, Yan Yo, going through for the final time into Lesmo 1. He's had quite an easy race. So we've already seen Andy Boardman heading to the pits. So that's a bit weird. Has he already been flagged off? Because it doesn't look like that for me.
Well, something's happened to the 70 that was in that P2 space, but like I said, has returned to the pits, so that will probably I think it'll put them 1 lap down. But Jan Yo managing to be the only TCX car then, if that is true, to not be lapped was the 48, the only car left on the lead lap, which is quite an achievement in and of itself as they come through. Ascari for the last time in race 1, it's going to be there is no stress now. Jan can just sort of cruise as long as you've got enough fuel. I'm wondering if that might have happened. Has Boardman run out of fuel?
Here we get from Tom Bryant, the 70 ran out of fuel, so one finish will be Dr. Lap and will end up last. So yeah, that's a shame for Andy Borgman. But yeah, this is just a victory lap for Yan Yo, as he doesn't have to, you know, be afraid of anyone overtaking him as he comes up to the start-finish line and takes victory in the TCX Pro.
So that is race 1 done and dusted. It was John Aracer who won your GT4 Pro, followed by Will Stevenson and Grim Lilith, an incredibly close finish. Danny Santo is your winner in the GT4 AM class, followed by Radu in that Mercedes, who was battling Alpines all day, it must have felt like, and Gonzalez for the P3. Even after the issues that the Alpines have faced, still came back in a podium position. Jan Yo won your TCX Pro. Obviously, Andy Boardman was second, will then be docked a lap and basically finish last. So it's Ted Edwards on the second step of the podium, and it's difficult to work out in the Pro. It might be Jordan Daly who ends up on your P3. For the AM class, it was the 17 Klapperman who took that. It was the 79 had issues. We saw them spinning out of the Ascari chicane, and that was all their race row. And then for the third place in that, it is Hauser who managed to, you know, keep the car back on the road after starting well, but just fell back a little bit in the race.
And we've just had a confirmation from our man behind the cameras, Ryan Gill, that he has been docked the extra lap and will finish last indeed. But yeah, this was a very good race 1. I hope to see a bit more of that in race 2. Maybe a little bit less spins, but definitely the good fights that we saw throughout race 1. I hope to see a bit more of that as we start race 2 in just a little bit.
I think you're still going to get some amount of spins. It just seems to be that the cars, you know, start to fall off. You also will remind you that we started on a fast track, which really won't help your tires. It won't help you breaking them in slowly and with, you know, minimal graining, because you're going to be sliding around on them just with how GT4s and TCX cars are. You know, you take even more grip away from them, don't really help them. And the cold conditions as well also won't really aid them. You know, keeping heat into the tires would have been probably a little bit of a challenge for some of the cars, because you're just not putting the heat into them like you would a GT3 car, for example. So yeah, the race 2, it's going to be interesting. Maybe some people have managed to learn a little bit about their cars, learned what's going on, what works, what doesn't, maybe a few setup tweaks here and there, and we'll be back for race 2 very shortly.
Yeah, but it's going to be just a wait and see, like, how much of a setup change do you want to risk? Like, if you already think, like, okay, well, I was very quick through the corners, but it was too slow on the straights, maybe just a little bit less rear wing, maybe change the rake a little bit, but I don't think they're going to try and do too much, because otherwise the car will feel completely different to what you had in race 1, and you might even change it the wrong direction if you don't fully know what you're doing there.
Yeah, very much so, and it will reset to qualifying positions, so that's going to be interesting as well. Some people who had a had a less than stellar first race, because there was quite a lot of people who qualified very well. You know, the Alpines, for example. They might just be able to make back the the race in race 2.
Yeah, and we see now Malcolm has also said he's gutted that his brake pedal snapped and caused to hit someone. So that's one thing that happened in race 1 that I don't think we saw on stream. But yeah, so you still see things like that happen. Some hardware failures causing collisions in the game. Not something you'd like to see, but yeah, it is a part of life. Like, it could happen, something mechanical in real life. Something just breaks, car's out of control, and yeah, you just try your best not to hit anyone or cause any other problems. But yeah, I think that might have been actually when Malcolm was it Matt Pryor in the Ginetta?
I'm not actually sure. It could have been, but there wasn't any contact during that incident. They just flew over. Oh
yeah, no, it was Matt Pryor in the Ginetta. So yeah, he just let go, but then yeah, you can see, like, hardware or mechanical failures happen in the virtual world as well as it does in real life. So yeah, anything can happen indeed. But still, I'd say good job by Matt Pryor avoiding a massive collision there by just releasing the brakes and just shooting himself, well, Dukes of Hazzard style, over the curbs in order to avoid worse for anyone else.
Yeah, and like you said, this just kind of what the decision that you have to make, and as a driver, and we go back to live pictures as the cars start to grid up. This will be once again your grid position. It's John Araser once again will be hoping to repeat that race, that the lights to flag victory that they had. It's the '94 SRI Esports car. They'll be hoping that the Alpine can still run that pace and keep up with it. The 108 and the 115 Grid Lilith will probably, those two will want to battle once again. And looking back into your pack of SRI Esports, the Alpines, all of them hoping to have a little bit of a better race. Tom Bryant to the left as well. We're hoping to repeat we didn't really talk much about Tom Bryant just because we didn't really have to. Janetta, the 27 is still there, knows that they're going to be under fire from the 63, immediately. And then the TCX class. Andy Boardman this time will want, to have a much better race, not only running out of fuel, but starting on pole position. You kind of want to finish in that pole position. Jiang Yo hopes that that doesn't happen, and he ends up back in the start of the grid. And then we have an Alpine that's ended up all the way back here.
What's happened to them? Well, that's going to make an interesting start.
The 169, I think that's what the missing grid post is way up the order. I'm assuming that they've had an issue, disconnected, and have ended up ended up having to rejoin, but they've been placed at the back of the grid as we swoop up. Well, there's something missing from that picture there, ladies and gentlemen, between the Porsche and the BMW. Seems to be a little bit of a gap.
Yeah, there seems to be. I think Agudelo was one of the Alpines that got into trouble very early on in the race, went into the pits, and they might have disconnected after, and that might have caused a little bit of a problem with them rejoining later on instead of staying on the server. But yeah, that's. Let's see what the game decides to do with that missing slot to the left of Malcolm, because now we have William Stevenson right behind them, and. I'm actually looking very much forward to the start of this race with Danny Santo maybe now trying to take that P1 immediately from John Araser and actually bring John Araser into the fight throughout the race instead of being able to just stretch his legs and get ahead of everyone else.
Well, we'll see if that happens, but the 1689, they already know what to do, and they already know that obviously they have a very solid race car. We didn't see any sort of issues, wobbles, spins, anything from the McLaren all day. It just looked a very planted car. The other thing about this race, which is going to make it a little bit interesting, maybe for the lap one lunges, as we sometimes call them, is the fact that this track is actually optimum rather than the fast that we saw the last time, and that's Will Stevenson in the background having a bit of an off-track excursion is Will. But you see, the problem is, Will, that is not how you heat your tires going into the gravel. But everyone will be doing the same name of the game. It's still very cold on the track. All of the cars still have to get heat into the tires and into the brakes. And for some of them, as he says, wanting to make amends for race one. This man here, Andy Boardman, the Weasel racing car, not only did something happen to them at lap one to drop them back, they ran out of fuel. Maybe a few extra litres chucked into that TCX car this go around.
Maybe just a bit more than a few litres, because if he's able to stick or stay ahead as much as Jan Yo did compared to everyone else in race one, then he will have to do even a lap extra compared to the one he already missed out to. So I have to wait and see what happens there. But yeah, we can now also see them once again trying to heat up those very, very cold tires. And still, every time I see those eyes on a Jan Yo car, it gives me just, yeah.
It's good, great distraction technique. I mean, if you look in the mirror, if you're at it, maybe that's what spooked Andy Boardman. Came into turn one and saw the eyes, the whites of Janyo's eyes, and just had to jump out of the way. Really, was just too afraid. From a distance, it kind of looks like a Pac-Man ghost. I'm kind of seeing really with the eyes facing the same way.
Yeah, shame there's not any candy here on track, so they can turn transparent and we can eat them up. So that's a bit of a shame for Andy Boardman here. But we'll just have to wait and see what happens into turn one this time. If Andy Boardman is able to keep his P1 position into the first corner, and maybe he's learned from what happened in the first race. Maybe a bit further away from the TCX cars, maybe taking the inside instead of the outside, or the other way around. Yeah, take every experience you had from the first race and use it to your advantage in the second.
And there goes Malcolm in the 199 flying by, probably trying to get just a last moment of heat into the brakes. One of the easy ways is just to get up to some speed and stamp on them. Just hold both feet on them right up until you stop. Obviously, heating the brakes will also slowly heat the carcass of the tyre, because ACC does model that, in fact, quite well actually. You will get heat into the centre, and then you can kind of hold that. What it doesn't do is put heat into the skin of the tire. That's why you'll see some drivers kind of brake riding and then weaving and then brake riding again, then weaving to just heat them up fully. But it's race two. It shuffled it up where the Camaro is now on the left and Grim Lilith is on the right, but the 699 still leads the way. We're waiting for the green flag still. We're waiting for the marshal to wave it. There you go, green flag. The 699 McLaren is away, and DeSanto this time can't tuck into the slipstream because he's had a better exit.
Yeah, and as he now just slots behind the McLaren of Johnny Racer, trying to have that better start to the race. He was faster on the launch, but here we still see the speed of that McLaren was too much for Danny Santo. As we see William Stevenson go through, and this is a much more messed up turn one compared to we had in race one. A lot of cars having to take the off ramp into the first chicane, and let's see what happens with the order after they've all hit the first timing line.
Well, that's Malcolm. That is the 119 Porsche that has ended up backwards at turn one. Obviously, some contact or something has happened there. Turned them around. That shuffled Will Stevenson now to the third place. The Alpines filed through, and another one of the SRI Esports cars having a little bit of an issue. And Janyo fires himself up into the second half of the chicane for the TCX class, trying to take that lead back off Andy Boardman, but it just wasn't enough. And that's also brought one of what was your AM leader for a lot of the race into the battle now. So the battle for the TCX is hotting up because they're all bunched up by the GT4s again, which we thought might happen. Looking back to the front, Danny Santo, this time much closer to John Araza, has not fallen off as much as they did in race one, and is all over the back. And this is the thing in the Alpine: if you can keep with your opponent, if you can keep this distance and keep right within the slipstream, then you have half a chance. As soon as the SRI Esports Alpine fell out of the slipstream, the 699 will just slowly drive away from you. But this distance, this is what makes the race.
Yeah, but even already there at the end of that short straight, you can see the 699 of Johnny Razor already pull away just that little bit. And even here now, throughout the corner, he's been able to take a little bit more distance away from the Alpine. But as before, he's still in that slipstream. But he also had to think about William Stevenson already gaining on him in the back there with that straight line speed off the Chevrolet as they head into the first chicane. And actually, William Stevenson is getting closer to the Alpine, but through the second half of that chicane, Santo is back to the rear of Johnny Racer, and let's see how long he can maintain this pace.
Yeah, the 94 effort to really use the car where it matters. William Stevenson still seeming to have some issues with Camaro's brakes and that, maybe not expecting the speed that they've got, and the brakes are just not really up to scratch of stopping that car going through the second chicane. Santo is still very, very close. William Stevenson managing to sort of munch a bit more of the curbs, keep himself in contention. The car doesn't seem to be as strong as an Alpine in sector one, but it definitely makes up for it in the mid sector. faster. You can see that Camaro slowly gaining more and more as John Aracer eyes forward, just doing everything he can, knowing that he's got to keep the Alpine, you know, behind, because then you have two gigantic straights. So that is where you can make it up, and hopefully he'll be thinking eventually that if William Stevenson can get into this battle, that really takes the stress off him.
Yeah, just like what happened in the first race. But it all depends on how well Danny Sandro can keep to the rear of John Aracer without having to look too much backwards. But here we can see it's a little bit slow out of the Ascari chicane for the Alpine, as William Stevenson now can get up into second and try and maintain that position throughout the Parabolica and try and get closer to John Aracer instead of having to fight the Alpine throughout the entire race. What I also saw happen at the start of that lap was in the background, the 169 of Agudelo got the yellow flag, teleported to the pits and disconnected again. So not the greatest day for them, as we now see Stevenson heading into second with the Alpine side by side with him, just putting out a little bit, but we all know how well those brakes of the Alpine work going into turn one. As they enter the braking zone now, the Alpine taking the inside line, but William Stevenson keeping his nose in front and passed a lot earlier this race than he was able to do in the previous one.
Yeah, the 108 for the Connection Loss Racing Camaro, just chopping the nose off the little Alpine there. Obviously being, you know, just that tiny bit farther ahead and managing to get the position done. Switching back to the TCX class now that they've kind of sorted themselves out, as that is in the background. That is just, in fact, I'm trying to work out which car that is taking to the off-ramp, because it's Jan Yo just behind. In fact, there you go, it's Hauser, I was going to say, it's the AOA racing car. It's Hubert Hauser missing turn one, having to take to the escape ramp. But more importantly, Andy Baldwin this time has managed to keep the lead of the race in the 70. Being hounded though by the 17, has not really managed to break away. And Jan Yo, something has happened to the 48, and now they're on a recovery drive back through the field.
Yeah, they're chasing Jordan Daly very much in the 197. So now have a look at Matt Pryor in the Ginetta, trying to hunt down Relano in the Alpine. Once again, he finds himself in an Alpine sandwich, trying to get past all of them. I don't know what it is with this Ginetta and the Alpines, but they keep seeming to find each other like a bunch of magnets.
Yeah, it just seems that the cars are very evenly matched, and they end up, you know, together. But you can see what happens. Look at the rev counter in the Ginetta. You're just about seeing that sixth gear, and you're basically touching the red line, but you will do down the front straight, and that is then your forward charge can be completely stopped. And with the Alpines just having that little bit extra, Matt Pryor really has to work this Ginetta hard to get to the points. You can see there's sixth gear, the revs are climbing, and now that's it, rev limiter. We've now run out, and here comes the other Alpine just sailing by.
Yeah, but then here they hit the brakes again on the outside for Matt Pryor, trying to keep side by side with the Alpine. He's able to got the inside for left-hander there. But we also have the Porsche of Malcolm now right up beside all of them. Or no, correction, that's Pimlot's slotting in behind there in the other Alpine. Not a car we saw a lot of in race one. Yeah, so Pryor has even more visits of Alpines there.
Everything's getting a little bit dicey. There's Alpines everywhere in Matt Pryor's mirror. Will be probably sick of seeing Alpines after this race end, managing to squeeze the nose of the Ginetta just in front to keep that P9, which is I think it's P4 overall in the AM class. But you know, just having to keep the race alive at this point, it's one of those when you pick a car for a whole championship, you have to take its good days, you have to take its bad days, and you know, Matt Pryor really working that Ginetta as much as the car's got to give to stay in front of these Alpines, trying to, you know, dart hard right to break the toe of these cars, because you just can't give your opponent any advantage, because you don't have any in speed yourself.
No, and we see here, this is a little bit better side for the Ginetta, going through the chicane, being able to get a little bit more space between them, but we already know once we get onto that start-finish straight, we will see the Ginetta hit that speed limiter, and yeah, then the Alpines will try and pass through. Though, as we saw already in the previous lap, Matt Pryor can defend very well against those inbound chicane because of the Giannini's performance in the corners. But yeah, this does seem like he's fallen back a little bit compared to Relano, having to focus on Gonzalez and pin up behind.
And there's the red limiter, and there goes the Alpine 1. And it's Neil Pimlott who's going to look up the inside as well. Hard on the brakes is Neil Pimlott, going for the massive dive on his fellow Alpine, but he doesn't make the corner. Matt Pryor then having to go round to this contact.
Oh, that's not what you want to see with Neil Pimlott then, just tapping the inside of Gonzalez in front. And this gives Matt Pryor the much needed room that he needed in order to maybe pull away. But that was some maneuver from Pimlott on his fellow Alpine. So now to see Jan Yo trying to get past John Daly as they go through the first chicane on the route to the Curva Grande. But yeah, this is definitely a fight that we're going to probably see a lot of.
Yeah, Jan Yo on a bit of a recovery drive here. Obviously had race one, had a very good race one, and just seemed to drive away from everyone. But race two, obviously not going all the way of the I Likes Taters 48, having to battle Jordan Daly, trying to get the position back, closing up very much in the second chicane. But you have to try and make the better run than your opponent in the match machinery, because you'll get a little bit of a slipstream, but almost you kind of don't want to be this close if you're going for the slipstream technique, because you won't get the slingshot. You'll just get alongside your opponent. But a kick of dust there from the 197 might be the time, the signal for Jan Yo. You've got that little bit of a run, and they're going to be side by side coming down into the Ascari chicane. I think we might see once again what has happened before. Late on the brakes and sort of park yourself on the inside of the apex, but Jordan Daly opts to take the late brakes. Will he get it stopped? He will, and does exactly that. Parks it on the apex of Ascari. There's no way around there, and it's then back line astern, and you can see what's happened now. Because Jan Yo's so close, maybe the run was a tiny bit better, but you don't have any slipstream. You can't get alongside, or you can't blast by your opponent.
Yeah, I see what Jano tried to do. He tried to get a bit more speed going into the chicane by braking a little bit earlier and having a tighter line through there compared to what Jordan Daly was able to do. But because Jordan Daly parked it on the apex, he was not able to capitalize on that extra speed that he was getting through there. Actually had to lift off, go a little bit wider than he wanted to before he could properly get on the throttle again before going towards Parabolica, as they'll probably try and do the same thing here once again. Maybe outbrake Jordan Daly into the first chicane as he has the inside now, and he makes the overtake. Very tight through the first left-hander there onto Curva Grande, and let's see if he can keep a hold of that position going through there.
They'll back up a place for Jan Yo, back on the recovery drive. We'll have to keep an eye on what happens here. Now, this is a familiar sight. It's Rolando in the SRI Esports Alpine having to fight. There's still Mike Redford in the Porsche. But swapping back to the start of the race. The lead of the race, we've had a change of position for the lead. William Stevenson in the Camaro has managed to overtake John Racer, and this is the run coming down to Ascari. It was a little bit of a better run for Will Stevenson, still opts for the inside line. The Racer covered it initially, but we've seen how good Will is on the brakes in that Camaro. Fires it up the inside and slots in. The brakes on the Camaro, either the brakes on the Camaro are very good, or Will has got very good at mastering them. So the 108 Connection Loss Racing now leads this race, but look at the speed of the McLaren coming down the front straight.
Yeah, and here we can see what Stevenson missed in race one was being able to overtake that Alpine early on and actually have a charge at John Racer. And now John Racer is fully into the mix there with the Alpine, not too far behind, and Grim Lillard once again only a second behind P3. Making this once again a very tight race. So you look back at Rolando trying to get past the Porsche of Mike Redford. He's got the better exit there, tucks in behind the Porsche as they go through the Curva Grande on towards the Variante della Roggia, which is the second chicane for those that don't know. To see if he tries and take the inside line here, gets better on the brakes, but no, he decides to stop behind and keep it as is.
Well, the brakes on the Porsche are also no slouch, really. Swapping back to this battle, it's Jordan Daly once again up the inside of Jan Yo. They're going to be both hard onto the brakes into the first chicane. Jan Yo is going to be on the outside. If you can hold it for the inside, sometimes you can block the move happening. But no, Jordan Daly manages to get his nose ahead, and he's now managed to pull out just enough of a gap that you're out of the danger zone by the second chicane. So there's a position change once again for what is essentially P2 in your Pro TCX class overall. But Andy Boardman this time having the much happier race, so long as he's put enough fuel in that car to actually manage to finish the race this time.
Yeah, it would be good if he's got enough fuel in there, but on the other hand, he doesn't have to struggle as much and can just go his own pace at the moment. As we look at Javier Gonzalez trying to get past Neil Pimblott, both in the Alpine, same type of car, just as we have in the TCX class, so we know how difficult overtaking can be in this situation. As Javier Gonzalez takes the inside of the Parabolica, going on to the start-finish straight, the defining factor here will be if Neil Pimblott can get a little bit of that slipstream from the cars in front, but we see Gonzalez slip behind Pimblott as they go towards the first chicane. Decides to take the outside line compared to Pimblott. The seats on the brake a bit later, they hit the brakes around the same time. Pimlott's able to maintain the lead now as they exit the first chicane.
That's kind of the matched machinery part coming on, even as much as we've got the TCX class, which is all the same. Fair few Alpines in this race, and when you're slipstreaming, you have an advantage. You pull out, and that's it. You just have to be side by side. They can be as late on the brakes as you can. They can have the same corner speed as you can. You have to start thinking of other, sort of solutions to get by your opponent. But this might be it. A little bit of a bad run from Neil Pimblott there in the 104. There was some dust kicked up in front. Might have, been looking for an accident that was going up ahead, and it's still side by side. The 216 and the 104 run into the second part. Very, very close there. I thought that Neil Pimblott might try cut the nose off the SRI Esports Alpine a little bit more, but they run on. And in the background, that is, I believe that's the 199s also had quite a slide.
Yeah, and I think there was a little bit of contact between the two Alpines as they exited Lesmo 2. Neil Pimblott being able to stay ahead even though he had the outside going into Lesmo 2, but being able to cut off the 216 going into that corner as the 216 goes very wide, hits the gravel, and that will slow him down significantly. Just ahead we have Matt Price just tucked up right behind Velagno now, so he's really been able to catch up to the Alpine in front, the 89. As he'll probably once again have a better exit into Parabolica, but we keep an eye on Javier Gonzalez to see what he can do here against Neil Pimblott going through the Parabolica, try and get the slipstream once again. But yeah, as we saw before, it's then a matter of fact if he can catch up whoever dares to hit the brakes later.
Very much so. We'll have to keep an eye on what this battle is doing, really. And as he says, just a little bit of a gap sort of being brought out now between the two Alpines just makes it that little bit harder. In the background as well, you still have Malcolm, the 119, battling Radu in the 63. That is your the lone Mercedes AMG GT4 car, and the TCX class still right now has managed to sort themselves out, but Jordan Daly and Jan Yo still locked in battles, and I think that might be a battle that rages on mostly to the end of the race as we swap to them here. Very, very close between the 197 and the 48. The 48 might have a little bit of a better run, tucking well into the on the underside of the wing of the Triple R Racing car. It's going to be alongside, and it's going to be a case of who is later on the brakes, who is braver. As I said, you can go to the inside of turn 1, but you can get the move blocked if they're still there on the inside. But Jan Yo manages to slot the nose just ahead, and the position is gained. But now, we've seen what happens. This move has already happened once before. Can the 48 keep it this time?
Well, it's actually happened the other way around, and I think this is actually the third time that move has happened between these two. So if there's going to be an overtake, it's most likely going to be in the first chicane in that way, with the chasing car trying to get the inside into the first corner of the chicane. Jan Yo blocks off the inside of the second chicane as they go towards Lesmo, but Jordan Daly has a better exit here as they go towards Lesmo 1, taking the inside line. keeping Jan Jo on the outside, and it looks like he's already got the overtake done here. But Jan Jo will have another opportunity as to go through Lesmo 2 and on towards the Ascari chicane.
Once again, some dust being kicked up, and that is going to rage on. And William Stevenson has missed the corner, and so has John Areza. Well, John Areza hasn't missed the corner, but he's brought it back into the clutches of DeSanto, the 94 Alpine, trying to hang it all the way around the outside. It's going to be very much at a disadvantage, being having a McLaren on your inside as well as the speed. He's still alongside though. He's going to have to use the Alpine's brakes. They're still side by side, taking the curb and basically jumping. There's contact between them and the 94, a little bit of a wiggle, and John Areza manages to muscle the McLaren back ahead. And this has brought once again what happened at the end of race 1. Well, Grim Lilith got involved and had some great racing. Well, what's happening in race 2? Grim Lilith's getting involved, and we might see some great racing.
Yeah, as he's just tucked up to the back of an Alpine as they go out of Lesmo 2 towards the Ascari chicane. Sounds a bit like a broken record, seem to be saying that a lot of times, but here we can once again see that speed of the 699 McLaren from John Areza as he takes the inside line against Will Stevenson and has already passed him before the entry going into the Ascari chicane, as now the three behind are very close together, but Stevenson has a very great exit out of Ascari as they head towards the Parabolica, going side by side, thinner exit now as they go once again like this, all trying to get that slipstream, that little bit of extra before they hit the brakes. As we now see Grim Lilith go to the inside, but he hits Will Stevenson, and the poor Alpine is stuck in between all of that as we see Grim Lilith wait for Will Stevenson to get going again. Yeah, we see the Alpine was just hit on the outside there, was able to avoid most of it, but it's good sportsmanship from Grim Lilith to wait for Will Stevenson to get going again.
It was a move, and it was just not a BMW wide enough for the 115. Ended up having a bit of a collision and taking out both Will Stevenson and the Alpine. But as he says, the Alpine got the better end of that deal and kind of skirted around it. Continues on, so I think that battle might continue on, but it has meant that John Areza has now kind of comfortably ran away with it. Still now it's got a 2.6 second gap as the Janettas had problem as well, Matt Pryor, and we see Neil Pimlott slowing down. I believe that's been contact between them as well. We'll see on the replay, and yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just a nudge in the rear, and once again good sportsmanship by these drivers, waiting for the person they have punted off, hit, whatever you want to call it. Though it does seem like, Neil Pimlott has actually continued, didn't want to lose too many positions, as we now see the 63 of Radu come towards the back of Pryor. One battle we also saw previously in race 1. Let's now go back to Jan Jo. It's actually dropped a little bit behind Jordan Daly. Now Ted Edwards joining this fight and coming on towards the start-finish straight. A third player has entered the battle.
Yeah, very much so. So we'll have to see what Jan Jo can do to defend this now, because he's he wanted to be catching up to Jordan Daly. He's now has to defend from the 195. The 195 is late on the brakes coming into turn 1. Jan's going to try what I mentioned. If you park yourself on the second apex, you can block the move, but it's not going to happen. The 197 is up the road, and now the fellow, the 195, follows him suit. The 48 not having the great race that they had in race 1.
No, and this time he's actually had to fight throughout instead of just being able to walk away with everything. But also with the way he's not had the speed, maybe you think he's had a little bit of a collision before with some of the car, or just a little bit off track, that he's lost that bit of pace maybe in the car. But yeah, we can only wait and see what happens further on in this race as he tries to get that position back, as Will Stevenson is now fighting Grim Lilith for P5 overall, as Tom Bryan has gone past them too after their collision going through the Parabolica. As we now look at Abel dos Ramos in the second Alpine, trying to go for second overall against his teammate of Dani Santo through the second chicane. This was not something I expected to be seeing at this point in time.
No, very much so. So the Alpines still battling one another. De Santo does hold the fastest lap of the race, but it does show that given on the day and given the drivers, the Alpine is still very much a viable choice in GT4, even at a track you wouldn't necessarily think it would be good at. This is Monza. You wouldn't really think of bringing a small 4-cylinder turbocharged French car to Monza. You'd be bringing your BMW with your gigantic engine, but it's really doing quite well in the hands of the SRA Esports drivers. Race 2, they seem to have got on with their cars a lot better and are really showing the pace that these little things have actually got. But yeah, teammates battling right towards the end.
Yeah, and it did take a little bit of luck with the collision between William Stevenson and Grim Lilith, but seeing the two Alpines fight here for second on the podium and for first within their class is quite something to see after especially what we saw in race 1, where the other Alpines besides Dani Santo were struggling a lot.
Yeah, very much so. But like I said, this time managing to get on with their cars a lot more. That's one of the first TCX cars that they're passing as well, and heavy damage on that car. So that TCX has had a bit of an excursion and a little bit more of a sad race. Neil Pinlot still managing to catch back up to the back of Matt Pryor, the 27. He knows that the Ginetta is going to hit the rev limiter soon. You have to be ready to pull out. You're slipstreaming as well. You've also got to be watching in your mirror, because look at the Mercedes coming in like an absolute missile, and that is Radu, who's going to try for a 2-for-1, launches it over the curbs. Neil Pinlot doesn't make the corner, and Radu has to take it to the curbs, launches the Mercedes into the air, but does get around Matt Pryor. Has now got to hold it off from the Ginetta coming into the braking zone. But Neil Pinlot is kind of laser focused in front to Malcolm, the 199, as that is a car in his class. That is a car that will gain you more points.
Yeah, and he's been trying to fight that 199 for a bit longer, as he had been fighting the AM class in GT4. As we now see the Ginetta go side by side with the Mercedes in the background, as the Mercedes is able to take a little bit more speed, it seems like, through Lesmo 1, and now has the lead going through Lesmo 2. But the Ginetta hits it up the inside. Was there a collision? Well, in any case, Matt Pryor's gone wide now, as we now look at the replay of them going through the corner. And that was very close in any case. But yeah, that was a little bit of a crazy move, trying to still hit the inside there with the Mercedes already on the apex. As now look back to William Stevenson going past Grim Lilith, or still battling Grim Lilith.
It was a very ambitious move. I think that's what we would call it. But like I said, they have to reset and try again. William Stevenson still wanting to get back at least a little bit closer to the Alpines ahead. Tom Bryant is quite a way up the road in the 42. Would take a mistake, an incident, or something of a miracle to catch back up to that car. But these two still managing to have some racing despite the earlier calamities. There goes Tom Bryant in the very brightly coloured M4. It's another car that's easy to spot as a commentator with the fluoro colours.
Yeah, currently the cameras are not really focused on the brightly coloured car, as we keep looking at the battle between William Stevenson and Grim Lilith, with only half a second between these two. Both speedy cars in the straight, not the fastest through the corners, as we now look back to the trio of guys fighting: Jan Yo, Ted Edwards, and now it's actually Hauser behind them. Looks like Jordan Daly's been able to get a bit of a lead compared to Jan Yo. Got a 3-second lead is the last I saw there. But yeah, now with Hauser also being able to fight the two in front, even though it's not for class, it's still for pride.
Very much so, and this kind of happens when you end up with the matched machinery, and this racing in packs, as it were. We see this a lot in the Monday Championship, where if you end up in a battle that you don't necessarily want, you can't break away from it, as the 195 darts out, looks to the inside, but Jan not really phased, taking the line that he knows that he can, and preserving the run, because you always have to do that in a TCX car. If you react to the person behind you and ruin your run, you're going to end up in sort of this position where the 195 is now there, but they don't have enough run to just slingshot by you. Jan's going to, really force Ted Edwards right to the outside. They're both on the brakes at the same time. Jan's got the inside line, managing to clip the apex, and once again locks the 195 behind them. If anything, hoping that Hauser might have a bit of a look on Ted Edwards and just give him a little bit of breathing room. But you still got, I think, one more lap on this one.
Yes, as we also see the 699 now going through the first chicane, so this will probably be one of the last laps, maybe one more depending. I think it's going to be tight if John Race is going to be able to get another lap in here. As we see Jordan Daly skip the second chicane there, but still very tight here between the three of Jan Jo, Ted Edwards and Hauser as they exited the second chicane through Lesmo 1. It does seem like Jan Jo has got a little bit of space now, with Ted Edwards being hounded by Hauser as they exit Lesmo 2. Still looking at the 48. Looks like a good exit there. And they now hurtle themselves once again towards the last chicane of the circuit. Underneath the bridge goes Jordan Daly as we look at Javier Gonzalez again, as he's dropped back actually a little bit and is now fighting Yomush in a Chevy, a 741 for P13.
Yeah, the 216, they were going great guns just right, it seems right at the end. These Genesis, these Alpines are really struggling, here at Monza, and are just dropping that pace, making the car a little bit harder to control. Those small mistakes are creeping in, and that's just really what's hurting them. Looking back a little bit further up the field, the number 9, who's been recovering from problems of their own for the Seb Danke 119 car, finds themselves once again with a bit of a familiar sight. An Alpine all over hounding them, but a great run through the Ascari, a little bit too close from the Alpine, and couldn't have the run that they wanted, has brought out a massive gap, enough of a gap that you're well within well without of the striking range into turn 1, as well as Neil Pimlott tries to use all the brakes that they've got, but they just don't have any left at the end of this race. The clock ticks to 0, and as the 699 has crossed the line, this will officially be the last lap.
And on the last lap, we still have quite a few battles raging on as we still look at Matthew Malcolm trying to get to the back. Correction, we're going back to the trio of Ted Edwards, Hauser and Jan Jo, just a bit in front of those two as they go through the second chicane on their second to last lap. Unless they get caught by John Eraser, that's going to be up to them, but they're going to try and fight John here in order to get that extra lap of racing going. But yeah, still, it's going to be blue flag situation, so they shouldn't fight the leader, but they might be thinking a bit too much about their own fight ahead instead of letting the leader past.
Well, we'll have to see what happens. Here comes John Eraser for the 699. Look at the speed. The GT4 puts the indicator on, saying that they are going this way. I think it's going to be a clean pass on the 195 once again. And there you go, just before Ascari lets them to continue battling in the background as the 195 takes all of the curves that they can, knowing that now, because the leader has passed them, this is where they will finish. It now means everything that you cannot be passed at all, because you don't have another lap at all to undo that problem if you so have one. Jan Jo might be hoping that the leader doesn't pass him. You do have Jordan Daly still there. Maybe a mistake, running out of fuel. It's not impossible, but I don't think Jan Jo's going to get it. Here comes John Eraser. The 699 swoops around, and it's going to be a race to the line, but it's easy to do for a McLaren GT4. And John Eraser once again wins race 2 here at Monza. A clean sweep by that, and Danny Santo has a much happier race, comes home in P1 in the AM, P2 overall, and Tom Bryant, he finishes P2 in the Pro class, P3 overall, a double podium. And Will Stevenson comes around in the 4th place. Grim Lilly rounds out the top 5, and Dos Ramos is P2 in your AM class.
Here we look at the leader of the TCX Pro class, Andy Boardman. A lot happier race now, but let's hope he actually has enough fuel in his car this time in order to make it to the end of this lap as he goes through the Lesmos. He's got a 13-second gap to Kloppelman, who's actually been able to pass Jordan Daly Oh, sorry, that happened at the start of the race, of course. But yeah, with Yanyo already having passed the finish line, Jordan Daly knows he's getting third in the TCX and second in the Pro class. So a much happier race for him as well. But yeah, that's a great race now from Andy Boardman. Great race from Kluppelman to get that 17 up into first in AM and second overall.
Yeah, very much so. A much happier race for Andy Boardman in the Greased Weasel racing car. This time managing to not be bogged down at the start of the race. We do see a couple of scratches on that car on the front and back. It's been in the wars as the 17, but managing to put it where it matters, keep it on the road and come round. The winner of race 2, the TCX Pro class, will be Andy Boardman, and I think P2 in that will be Jordan Daly when they finish. The 197 also having a much nicer race, even though they finished third overall in the first race because of Andy Boardman's misfortunes.
Yeah, but still doing it on track now instead of through a mistake of someone else will feel a lot better for Jordan Daly, and knowing that he had more pace in the car this time compared to the previous one. So I think the most disappointed driver for race 2 will be Yanyo, having that dominant performance in race 1, not being able to replicate it, being bogged down in the battle. At first with Jordan Daly and Ted Edwards, and then eventually having to let Daly go and see Hauser join that fight. He'll hope that he'll have more of a performance that he had in the first race for the rest of the championship.
Yeah, very much so. So as this championship continues on and the day of racing comes to the end, I want to thank all you lot for joining us tonight for some great GT4 and TCX action. And this is also the time of show where we thank all of our partners who make all of this possible here at RCI. You have AK Informatica, European Server Solutions, and PC Hardware. If you need anything like that, that is the one-stop shop to go for them. We have Fanatec. Do they really need an introduction? Some of the nicest sim gear on the in the market. And if you use our affiliate link in the description below, tells them that RCI sent you. Doesn't cost you anything, but it might help us out. And you got Driver 61. That's Scott Mansell's coaching service. You've got 25% off code in the description. It can and will make you a faster sim racer. Quite a few people in the RCI staff Discord, when that first came around, used it, and yeah, they definitely started to increase their pace, almost having to think about myself for some coaching to just get away from them. But it's been a great day here from Monza, and from all of the people who make it possible, the drivers, from you watching. We would love you to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We are very, very close at RCI TV to getting 4,200 subs, so that would be a really great achievement to get, probably maybe before the Christmas break, who knows. But hope you enjoyed the racing tonight. We will hopefully be back with your regular cast next week for some more great GT4 action. And well, at the weekend as well, don't forget, Night Owl is on. You've got the Monday Janettas if you want to see more sort of of this same class battles that have bring similar racing. It is very, very hectic on that. But from me, from Kevin Boss, and from this time Ryan Gill behind the cameras, we hope you've enjoyed your night, and we'll hopefully see you at the next one.